Hey everybody, welcome back to The Shift. This week's guest is Mike Cannon. Very excited. Before we zoom over to him, please sign up to the Patreon. So Patreon.com/The Shift Podcast. Put solo episodes there, and then the video of this will always be 2 weeks up early there, and the audio a week up early. And then just like bonus stuff as well. Also rate, review. I'm seeing your reviews and I'm loving it. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And other than that, let's start this episode. Mike, you've been on before.
I have, but never in this, never here in heaven.
Yeah, I've had like Karen and Jared back as well. So it's really nice to be like, I appreciate you. Come to a studio.
Yeah. I mean, this studio, this does look like the end of, you ever see the movie This Is the End?
No.
With Seth Rogen, Jay Baruchel, all those guys, but they go to heaven at the end, and this truly kind of, had it not been for the green, this would be very, very afterlife-ish.
Pat, is that what inspired you?
What? Heaven? Yes.
He goes, heaven?
What? Heaven?
Yes. Pat got high before this.
Yeah.
So if it
With
ends
Mike,
up just
yes.
like on my nose for a while.
I blame Mike. But it's just clouds. It was James Webb inspired. I'll let James take the credit for that.
Yeah. It's good stuff.
It's
I
good
like
stuff.
it. Yeah.
And also matches the colors of my logo.
Well, look at
I
that.
really struggled to find the word for logo there. I mean, I don't smoke. They were like, do you want some weed? And I was like, nah. Like, I'm already...
That would have been a cool episode, though, just to see.
First high.
Yeah. First high on camera while being recorded. There's a lot. That's a lot.
It'd technically be my third high, because the first time I ever took a drag, I was 17, and I drank so much, but apparently they say green, but I think I just went really white.
Oof,
and
yeah.
I just had to go home. It
Did
was
you get the
horrible.
spins and just feel like you were falling off the planet?
I remember them like carrying me.
There's also nothing there's nothing worse. I mean, after I quit drinking, I realized how much I loved weed, because after a while it just booze and weed kind of became one. It was just all like getting fucked up.
Yeah.
So then once I stopped drinking, I was like, oh, weed is way better alone. I don't want to throw up at all. Because every time I'd get hammered, I'd be like, let's cap the night off with a blunt. And then by the end of the night, I'd be like, just, trying not to release everything I consumed.
Yeah, no. The only good thing, though, with drinking is when you throw up, you're better afterwards.
Right. Puke and rally.
How do you get unhigh from high?
Well, you can take CBD. There's a couple things that actually like quell the feeling of it, but I don't know. I just white knuckle it through like a true Irishman. You don't like to see that? No part of you likes to torture yourself a little bit to see what your body and mind can come back from?
I feel like I did that with booze too much, and that's,
I hear you.
Other than the main reason why I quit was because that bad actual experience. But yeah, I would drink way
Don't
too
cut
much.
to me smiling after she said that. I'm just smiling because we had a conversation before and I
Yes.
just felt in the know, and I didn't also want to give any information away.
Yeah, I do feel like that's such an Irish person thing to do as well, though. Like an Irish woman would be like, someone could punch them in the face and they'd be like, well, I guess I should stop drinking tequila. Like,
yeah. You just stopped a certain thing that led
it's
to
not,
that incident.
and then you still hang out with the person who punches you in the
That's
face.
right. That's right.
That's a big self-blame culture. I thought it was fun with you because this made me think of maybe talk about this. Also, as a side note, what is happening with my tea here?
They always do that, dude.
As I was drinking it, I was trying not to interrupt you, and I was getting choked by a
By the
string.
tampon string hanging out of the little sipper.
I need to pick this out.
What kind of tea? What tea person are you?
This is Earl Grey, so
Okay.
I'll drink Lions, and half of Ireland is going to unsubscribe. Not half of Ireland, because half of Ireland doesn't listen to this, but half of the Irish listeners are going to unsubscribe once I say that, because they'll allow them to be Barry's. That's like the war.
Uh-huh.
That's, I think the Brits did that.
No shit.
They were like, let's give them tea, they'll fight with themselves.
It'll tear them apart. Yeah, it's good.
So, but yeah, Earl Grey is like a fancy when I'm, like for the podcast or out of the house. But I was thinking, because I feel like guilt is a big part of our culture. And so like I was texting Mike being like, are you still good for tomorrow? And he was like, one message was like, you had said originally could we do before shows? So I wasn't
Yes.
even thinking like what specific time, but we usually do this at 2 p.m. But like, again, it doesn't matter what time we do it. But you were like, yeah, that's great. And then your next message was, no, I said it's 2 p.m. okay. And you were like, oh, could we do it later? And then I didn't even get a chance to respond.
Yeah.
And then you sent a message, because I can't be away from my wife and child for 5 hours.
That's not exactly how I worded it, but it did. You're correct in the sense that I panicked at the non-immediate response of like totally cool. I was like, fuck, I'm asking too much. I'm being a nuisance. I'm completely throwing off her schedule because there's several moving parts. You got Pat, you had another guest potentially. So there's a lot of people whose day I was ruining. And it wasn't that I can't be away from them for 5 hours. It's that I can't possibly justify having a 5-hour free time gap to my wife, who is then solely responsible for our son.
Yeah.
She'd be like, what the fuck? You get a 5-hour vacation on a Monday?
I just thought it was funny because I was just taking a second to text Pat to make sure, because to me, it doesn't even matter what time we do. But I was like, wow, how Irish is that message?
Yeah. That is the embodiment, the text embodiment of anxiety.
I feel like as well, it'd be like a very Irish thing to be like, let's say if you had a broken leg and I'm like, oh, it's up the stairs. And you'd be like, oh, okay, well, like I broke my leg, but like, it's fine. I'll just drag it up the stairs.
Yeah.
Instead of being like, would it be okay if we just recorded it downstairs?
To be honest, I wouldn't even say anything. I'd just drag it up the steps, and by the time I'd get up there and I'd start complaining about my leg, and then they'd be like, what's your deal? And I'm like, well, I just, I powered through just to be not an inconvenience. But you're complaining. Exactly.
It's so funny because that's something I've learned from Americans, and specifically my boyfriend, because he would say that I would guilt him all the time when we first started dating, and I was like, no, I'm not. Like, I was didn't even realize that I was probably gaslighting him.
It was just a cultural misunderstanding.
Complete cultural misunderstanding. And then eventually he would point out, I was like, you need to tell me when this so-called guilting is happening. And then he would point out and he was like, that's guilting. And I'm like, no, that's just how Irish people speak. And he was like, you say this, it makes me feel bad for not coming over. And I'm like, oh, okay.
That's kind of the undercurrent of what I mean. I didn't think you'd pick up on it.
Oh, so now I directly got to go, fuck face, you got to come over and spend time with me.
There you go.
But it is much better because I feel like with non-Irish American men or American people, they're very direct. If they want a cup of tea, they'll just say yes or no.
Yeah.
And yes and no. And that yes and no does not mean yes and no in Ireland. Or you just be like, yeah, come over. I want to see you. There's none of these like, whereas we're like, I don't want to be bothering you, but I do want you to come. But I don't. And so it's all this like reading these subtleties.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess I don't know. I obviously don't know what it's like to be born or grow up anywhere else, but it is.
But you're Irish.
I am Irish also, but I've always found, and maybe this is just the generation I'm from also, is that we weren't really direct communicators. I am direct as a result of the indirect communication that I had as a kid. I mean, classically in Irish fashion, there was no emotional explanations or transparency or real expression at all. The only emotion we felt free to express was rage, and then once it was over, nobody ever talked about it again.
Yeah, rage can be seen as love.
Yeah.
Because I remember
it also is. It's the opposite side of the coin of love.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Because
unfortunately,
my boyfriend, he's really calm. He'd never like punch anything. But I've dated, and even my boyfriends in Ireland. Well, like one of them was high all the time, so I shouldn't count him. So if a friend of his listens to this, I'm not talking about.
Do I not count as a husband?
But I mean, as in, I don't think he would ever have he's like a rare. He wouldn't be punching walls.
Sure. Yeah.
A lot of my Irish guy friends I grew up, or first couple of boyfriends, would like show their anger by punching a wall, but it usually resulted in like love or passionate sex or whatever.
Sure.
Whereas with my boyfriend now, he would never. And when we first started dating, I was like,
This is in America or this is over?
In America. Okay. Here now, this American guy, and I remember being like, I don't know if he likes me, because he doesn't like get aggressive.
His knuckles aren't even bleeding.
Yeah, what the fuck?
How do I know?
Holes in the wall.
That's actually, it's funny you say that because that's when I started going to therapy. Is I punched through my bathroom door. And as I pulled my hand out, I texted a friend to give me a number for a therapist.
Okay, good.
Because I was just like, I can't live like this. That's how I grew up. I mean, I grew up in that kind of environment where truly just rage-filled, violence, all the, all that shit, hitting, blah, 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 all that stuff. And I would, the only expression of togetherness I had with my dad was like competitions over ping pong, and then if I lost, I'd turn and splinter the fuck out of the wall, and he'd laugh at me. Like, it was like there was never any like, what are you doing? You're crazy. It was like, you're an idiot. Look at you, stupid. So I knew that I wanted to kind of break the chain a little bit, and then I didn't want to carry it into adulthood. And then once I did, I was like, all right.
How old were you when you punched the bathroom?
I was probably like 27.
Okay.
27, yeah, probably. So even still pretty late, but and it took me years then to even quit booze, which was probably a facilitating factor in a lot of my problems. But yeah, that I definitely realized I had an anger problem then.
How did you go from then the next time you wanted to punch a wall? What did you tell yourself to stop punching that wall other than ouch?
Yeah, I mean, that was a big deciding factor. I didn't even learn after I broke my hand. So my freshman year of high school, I ran track to stay in shape for the other sports that I actually cared about. And
Gaelic football?
Like Gaelic football for real. I mean, I play as center half forward, and so we had to do a fair amount of running. But I would basketball mostly, and then soccer as well were my main sports. And so I ran track for 1 year. I ran in every single odd event, anywhere they needed somebody, because I was just an athlete. I had no abilities or technique. I just was thrown into certain shit. So in practice, we had to run 8 400s. The 400 is a full sprint one time around the track. So it's grueling because it's a long distance and you're just full out the whole time. And on the 8th one, I did not break the time set, which I believe was like 60 seconds or something like that. So I got like 60.5 or 61 seconds, and I didn't get it. So he said, do it again. And I punched the ground, and my knuckle came all the way down to my wrist. My hand ballooned immediately. I go to the coach. I asked him if he thought it was a break. He was like, you're good. Keep running.
Was he also Irish?
He was.
Or Italian?
He was Italian. Yeah, he was definitely Italian. He was like 400 pounds with spaghetti stains on his shirt. So he was definitely Italian or just a fan of their cuisine. But he made me keep running. I then played basketball on it that night, almost fucked my hand up forever. And still from that point on, didn't learn not to punch things until 10 years later.
Yeah. Yeah. My dad has this saying, like, you'll learn your mistakes the hard way. But in this case, you were like, the hard way.
Yeah. No, that's my whole life. I don't know. I'm very, what is that word? Not ignorant, but like when you have a thick head and you only learn through more or less punishment.
Yeah.
I have to make the same mistake a million times for me to learn from it.
I'm pretty
dumb, another word.
No, I mean, I'm pretty similar. Like, my dad said that sentence to me all the time. You'll only learn the hard way. And that was after like eight physically and emotionally abusive men that I was like, they love me. I can change them.
But if you want to really twist it on your dad, it's his fault.
Yeah.
That you're into abusive men.
Yeah. I saw my mother beat you.
Yeah. There you go.
Oh, no, it's not his fault. Well, I mean, it's his fault because he was you know what it is? My therapist said, I hate when you're just such a classic, easy solve case. Because I didn't go to therapy until I started dating my boyfriend here, who's like really sweet and kind and nice and stuff. And I was like, I should go to therapy for this. Mine was a nice
As in,
boyfriend.
like, you don't want to fuck it up. Good for you.
And I know that I would get defensive or maybe read into things and stuff. And, from having therapists on the podcast and stuff, it was like kind of like my own therapy as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm really glad I went because it's like all these like little things that trigger you that your partner doesn't know the background, and you're getting all like fired up, and they're like, "I just said tomato."
Yeah,
you don't know what a tomato did to me.
Yeah.
But so she was like, "Oh, you date these guys," because once I stopped dating guys like that, then I kind of got friends like this that needed a lot of help, and she was like, "I think like maybe you couldn't help your dad when he was getting fed up, and then you couldn't fix your mother. And then you weren't saved." So she's like, because my dad left when I was 5, and then I was just left with this like, psycho till I was 18.
Yeah.
And she was like, I think there's a part of you that tries to like help, always like over help because you weren't helped. And then, so it's like all this like, okay, it's like pretty obvious. But then you feel much better. You're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Maybe.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious to anybody from the outside. But once you're in it, you're like, this is a tangled mess and there's no way I could get through it.
Yeah, so I definitely learned the hard way too as well. Oh my God, string of bad guys. And then it was also like a string of, because I have such great friends, but also a string of toxic friendships. But then so with the boyfriends, you get to a point where you're like, I'm kind of embarrassed saying the same story. Why does this keep happening?
Yeah.
And then with the friends, you're also like, why am I the problem? Why do I keep having these like toxic friends? But then, yeah, you're just like,
well, you're also in comedy.
Oh my God.
Like, so your friends are also proximity based. So you're just you're ensconced in mental illness. It's like, what else are you gonna do?
I also like love being nice and being helpful too. Like the thing is, I've learned about like boundaries, and so giving help once it doesn't like negatively affect me too much or whatever.
Yeah,
Whereas
yeah.
before I'd be like starving, giving away all my food type of
Right,
Irish Catholic bullshit.
Martyr.
Yeah. Like who cares?
That's
Who you
my
doing that for?
that's my family's way of winning affection is to just eventually do enough to the point where you feel bad, so you're forced to love them.
That's so true. When you were saying you'd hop up the stairs
Mm-hmm.
and you'd sit here, a part of, so if you were with an Irish person, they'd be like, oh my God, you shouldn't have done that. You're so good. Let me get you a cup of tea. Let me look after you. But I feel like if you were with an American person who's no Irish in them, would be like, why the fuck did you do that? And then you'd feel like an idiot because
Right.
you're like doing this nearly to be liked, to be
Yes.
like, look at the effort I put through.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think there is like a big people pleasing thing with Irish people. Like,
Yeah.
Maybe that's because we didn't get the affection from our parents. Because your
Yeah, I
parents
mean,
will say, I love you behind your back. Or,
People pleasing also is a symptom of having alcoholic parents or just or out of control environments. So a lot of that is just trying to control as much as you can possibly have of your surroundings.
The comedian who was on last week, Salma Hindi, and we never got to talk about her. She has a TED Talk called about, I forget what it's called, but it's about people pleasing. But she said in it she wasn't getting what she needed from her parents, and then in turn she was looking for the validation
Sure.
from her friends, but that's too much to expect on friends.
Yeah.
It was really interesting. I was like, oh, I know so many people, because I've had like people, people please, and then I'm like, if it doesn't suit you, don't do, where it's because like then they're annoyed when they're like, oh, now I have to go over and mind someone's cat. I'm like,
Yeah.
you could have said no. This
Right.
person doesn't know. Now you're pissed off with Shelley.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you'd cause them enough conflicts by just trying to make them liked, trying to make yourself liked and all that stuff. I do find it something you just said. I've been like mulling through this a lot lately because in therapy a lot of the focus goes to external things and how they affected you, like your parents, and my parents didn't give me the attention that I needed, so that's why I seek external validation through both comedy, everything else. But I also think that there is an element of it where I have an insatiable desire for attention. So I don't think there is a human being capable of providing the attention that I soulfully require. Which, you know what I mean? Like,
That's why you need 400 people at Gramercy Theatre.
Exactly.
Was it 400?
It was, yeah. a little more.
I'm like, that sounds about enough.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of it, right? And even then, that glow lasted 48 hours. 48 hours. Because, then the reality of the situation comes in. All of a sudden, you're reminded of a bill or whatever, this, commission that you got to pay and all this shit. And it's like, okay, like I'm back to whatever, doling out checks and trying to make this work as best as I can. But that's why I'm trying my best to kind of find that common ground of both finding the source of my shit and also then owning what for whatever reason, the hand I was dealt for, me needing that kind of validation and attention. It's weird. And too much.
Yeah, but I think you're right. I think when it comes to a lot of comedians, anyway, there is a level of attention. But then I don't know, because then some comedians are so socially awkward and can't handle the attention in like how do you feel when you're at like a bar with loads of people? Are you like, I'm the storyteller?
No. So that's another thing is like my whole life I strive for the compliment, and then as soon as somebody gives it to me, I fucking wilt.
Yeah.
I can't handle it. I'm so uncomfortable. I feel like they're like almost caressing my back with cold hands. Like it just is a very odd sensation.
That's the Irish. The whole Irish thing is, so if you compliment a woman's clothes, she'll always be like, oh, it's from Penny's,
right.
Which is like the cheap store. You don't take a compliment. You're always like, this old thing, no, stop. Or like even like people be like, oh, you did your album, and you're like, oh yeah, but you're like, it's shite.
Yeah, you immediately try to disqualify it somehow.
It's so, and like for me, dating Leland, that was frustrating also when we first got together, because he's like, just fucking take the compliment, like,
right.
And then you're like, oh, okay, yeah, it is, yeah. That was something I had to work on as well, because I love compliments.
Yeah, I do too.
I love them.
I literally live for them.
Yeah.
I've designed my life to get as many as humanly possible, and it's still, once the goal is achieved, it's an uncomfortable sensation.
Is that something that you've tried to work on in therapy and how to like accept them? Because I think this is more of a cultural thing, you know, 'cause that's a very, very Irish thing.
Yeah, I've tried to work on deadening my reaction to both compliments and shit talk.
No.
So so the negative and the good, I'm actually trying to be self-contained as best as possible to where and beyond self-contained to my family as well, because their opinion should mean just as much to me as my own. But I want my thoughts about myself to be enough to go on.
Yeah.
I don't need somebody to tell me that I'm good, or I shouldn't need somebody to be like, this is great, for me to be like, okay, I'll keep going. Or somebody telling me that I suck shouldn't affect me creatively and what I'm trying to accomplish, or even career-wise trying to accomplish. It's like, it's all irrelevant.
Yeah.
It should be within my own mind frame, you know?
I don't know if I'm right, but I feel like I saw it on TikTok. So I'm quoting some fucking Buddhist on TikTok. I don't know.
We all know the real Buddhists live on TikTok.
Yeah.
that's where you find
on her
true nirvana.
yoga mat with her plant.
Yeah.
Like one of these. But with something like, if you say these things, like if you do what you're doing now and make an active effort, then it becomes natural. It just takes a while. It's like getting up every morning and have a cup of tea for me is like I don't know, like instinct. But like if you're doing that, if I started to be like, okay, I need to get up and have a glass of water every day, then it'll be like a chore at the start.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is a good analogy, but yes, I think I also think like taking the compliments and not letting that ego, because is ego the same thing as the negative voice?
Yes. Yeah. Both are ego.
Yeah, that's turning it, and because that's the thing going. Why would they say that? Because they go, oh my God, it was a great set at Gramercy, and your ego goes, well, that one joke didn't hit.
yeah.
As soon as you get the compliment. So it's like just being like, shut the fuck up, voice. And I did kill it. No one even notices that one joke. It's like constant inner monologue.
Yeah, I'm trying my best to not even define things. I'm getting very mushroomy about this, but I really mean this. Like I'm trying my best to not be like, that was good or bad. I'm trying to live in the feeling of it, because I know what it felt like to be on stage. I know what it felt like even before I went on stage. I know what it felt like when I looked at the sign and it said sold out.
Yeah.
Like I know how I felt. And then so any capture of it, because like watching it back on tape, it's like, oh, did I do that? Like, why is my face all stupid? Like, you know, anything like that is just kind of combing through things and nitpicking and trying to find the negative. But I'm trying my very best to like feel the feelings, remember them, and then be able to clock back to it as the only reaction I should consider.
Yeah, I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
I feel like when it's me for like my album, because I think another part with being Irish is you don't want to be like, yeah, I fucking loved it, and I'm so proud of myself.
Yeah.
You're not going to ever say that to anybody. That's crazy.
No, and there's a part of you that's like, if I say that, should I even keep doing comedy? Like, if I'm satisfied, like, what is it? I shouldn't be satisfied ever. There's so many people that have been better and are doing better, and you know, even just work wise. I don't know. That's my own.
No, I think you're right.
psychosis.
I think that there is an element with comedy that you need to keep striving, and that's what makes you keep writing great material. And like, so the way I look at that album is like, I can watch it back and be like, that's the best that I could have done for September 2022.
Yeah.
Because you know, even if you're doing the old co-host of this podcast is Des Bishop, and we met, I think he was doing comedy 20 years.
R.I.P. Then people are like, Irish people just panicking. They're like, he's dead.
We lost him.
To Bravo.
Yeah. But like even him, he's constantly, when we were working together, he was constantly working on new stuff.
Yeah.
And I think he's probably doing it like whatever, like more, maybe 25, 28 years now. I have no idea, but he's constantly working. So like I always think about comics like him who, it doesn't matter. You're never like, because comics here be like, it's 10 years, and that's such bullshit, because there's some great comics 5 years in who just who are going to just get better. They're going to be so talented, but like you just keep growing, I feel. And it's like, I'm just kind of like, that's the way I'm taking it. It's like, oh, it's the best I could do for now. Like, I'll do that hour on the 30th. It'll be like a mostly new hour, but I'm like, just the best I can do for the 30th.
Yeah. No, that's a healthy way to look at it too. And especially listen, it does take a long time to get to like mastery level of your own version of mastery.
But I don't think it's just 10. Like, I think these comics think 10 years. And I'm like, no, I'm like, there's other comics that I know that are like just coming into their stride 15 years in or 20 years
You're looking at one. For real. Or at least I feel that way. But
because I was always trying to get to the 10-year thing. And now that I'm like close to it, I'm like, I still got a lot of growth.
Yeah.
I'm like...
you're going to look back in 2 years and be like, shit, like, wow, I thought I was good. And now I'm good. And then you're going to look back in 2 years from then and be like, shit, I thought I was good. And now I'm good.
I look back from a month just from New York Comedy Club tapes and I'm like, what the fuck? But again, I'm trying not to do like, what the fuck was that? But I mean, you are, even just in a month, you can grow, or a joke can grow. Or like, I can't believe I was saying those words. So I think it's like, try to just be like, it's the best I can do for now.
Yeah, I think the cool thing is once you reach a level of competence or at least confidence in your own shit, then you can almost look back and be like, oh, actually, that's pretty good for that time.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? You're
that's
not
how
looking
I feel
at
with
yourself.
my album.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm like, I'm sure, but then I'm like, it's the first album. There's like John Todd's who released an album like a couple of years in where they needed 20 years to even string together. So that's the other thing too. Other people's processes take different times and stuff like that. But it's like, I remember a comic text me being like, about my album being like, I didn't ask for the advice either. It's just the usual.
It's the best you can receive.
Yeah. And then they were like, just a heads up, like, make sure you're ready because if you fuck up one word, it's on you. And
what?
And I was like, no, you could just edit that word out.
It's post-production, you fucking dummy.
And it's like, okay, also, you
it's
released an album
you.
the same time when I released an album. Like, you're on your second album. There's no, like, I just don't think I don't think there's as high stakes as we put it. Who cares? Like, I'll put it out and it, it'll, people will like it or they won't, and it's not the end of the world. I'll put out more stuff. I feel like comedians, and that's one thing I'm trying to do, is not let being a comedian and all the insecurities of that, and also the Irishness, because comedian and Irishness equals suicidal.
Yeah.
So I feel like for us, there's that extra layer that we're trying to be like, don't internalize this, don't think everything's shit, or you'll never create.
Yeah. I don't know. That also might be just part of my process. You know what I mean? There comes a time where you're like, all right, here's the wave of self-hatred, blah, blah, blah. Like, you're almost bored by the suicidal ideation. And then you're like, all right, wash over me. Let me think about killing myself. How would I do it? You're right.
Fantasizing about the knives.
Nonstop. And then you're out and you're like, okay, now let's get back to work.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I'm at right now.
I hate with the suicidal feeling, though. I don't like it as part of the process. Okay, I actually agree with you.
You don't love it?
I agree with you in one way, because I don't like it as part of the process, because you get in this thing where you're like, I need to create, and then you start getting like depressed, and then you're like, I just need this to be over so I can start creating again.
Yeah.
But you can't do anything when you're in that depressed mode, and it's just like you can't sleep, so then you can't function the next day. You're not doing as good in your sets. You're like, oh yeah, and then you get out of it and you get the manic, and then that's the best time to create, because you're like, I'm so fucking happy, I'm writing, I'm doing everything.
Yeah, write an hour in that time.
Yeah, right. I'm always like, this is the time to get the work done. As soon as I start feeling happy out of a low, I'm coming to that high.
Totally.
It's so good. Leland was so funny because he was like, because I was like having one of those depressed things that I wasn't really communicating it to people. And then I was like kind of frustrated that I was like, it's really hard because you want someone to know that you're on the edge, but you don't have the words to express it as an Irish person when you're in it. And he was like, yeah, you Irish people are so fucking annoying. You never ask for help when you need help. And I'm like, yeah, it's just true. We really don't. I'll be like, we could be like, I could be struggling putting something on the top shelf, and I'm like, fuck's sake, nobody fucking helps me. I didn't ask anyone to help me put it on the top shelf.
Well, you're just cursing society for their lack of willingness to help you. Yeah, I think with me at least, the thing that I've just come to accept, so I'm, this is again mushroomy whatever, is I'm really trying to practice like acceptance and gratitude, which is so schmaltzy and holistic and bullshit.
Oh, I think it's great.
But it is one of those things where it's like, first of all, having a kid completely changed my life, obviously, as it does, but it like reinvigorated my soul. It reinvigorated my outlook on life. So like the idea of like gratitude and feeling good is not something I want to keep to myself, because I was holding it in and being like, man, I was like, my wife knows, like, she knows how much I love this. She knows how much the family means to me and how much I'm so happy to be a dad and a husband and like all this stuff. And then I was like, sitting and thinking with myself and just being like, she doesn't know that because I haven't said it.
Yeah.
So I should say that. I should actually verbalize how I'm feeling because this is the only shot I have to let her know what she means to me and what this family means. So I started just like expressing gratitude and actually telling people when I love them and how happy I am that, I'm friends with people and stuff like that. Like, it's, again, I'm embarrassed by it, but it's also an important part of just me not living out the same fucking cycle as every canon man before me. And then in terms of acceptance, it's like that depression shit, right? That used to linger for me for a while. So sometimes it would be like months before I would get out of that. It would just be a feedback loop of self-hatred, of thinking I should quit, of thinking I'm not good enough. Who am I? Why am I even doing this? What is the purpose of any of this? To now, the acceptance of being like, hey, that's just how you feel right now, man. And the rebound will be much faster because of it.
Yeah.
So it's all about rebound now. Those feelings are unavoidable, but if I can kind of just accept them as just part of it, then I rebound much quicker and kind of just get back to it.
I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
I think it's such a great thing for people to hear. And I do feel like for me personally, moving to America was that because I found that people are like, I would be very loving and love to tell people I love them and hug them and stuff like that. And so here that felt very like accepted.
Yeah.
It wasn't, and being like grateful and
more so here in America
more
than
so
home.
Here, yeah. Instead even like, because then if you're like to someone at home, like I love you, you're like one of my best friends or whatever, they'd be like, they do that whole we're all doing and we're all like embarrassed. But a lot of my friends have emigrated now, my best friends, so I feel like they're probably the same with me. And then we've also known each other for a long time, so they're like affectionate as well. I wonder, and maybe you just like the next generation, but I do think Americans are very like they accept compliments very well, and that's not.
Okay.
I love to give compliments.
Yeah,
talk about Irish. I can always tell when someone's Irish American because I'll go like, "Oh, your dress looks good." And they're like, "It might be an American accent," but I'm like, "Are your family from Ireland?"
Yeah.
But I do. I think that's so right to like say, because even in my relationship now, like Leland, he tells me every day he loves me. He tells me every day I'm beautiful. And since I started accepting that and doing it back, and I think, there was times where he'd be like, oh, are you like happy or whatever? And I'd be like, obviously. And he'd be like, yeah, but you need to say it.
Sure.
And so all those like speed bumps in the first like 3 to 6 months of our relationship, like all that little work that he did and that sort of stuff where I was like, oh, this is very Irish. I need to like open up more or whatever. Now, 2 years later, we're like in such a great, healthy, and it became like what I said before, like routine. So,
yeah.
And it's so much better. It's like, oh, it's so nice to know that someone loves me every day.
Yeah.
And it's lovely.
It's funny because I'm just so interested in hearing your perspective, just because the idea that Americans take compliments well is foreign to me, because I think, and again, it might be a generational thing, but my friends and I didn't give each other compliments and weren't even all that nice not nice to each other, but just like loving and affectionate and like acknowledging our friendship. As we're always nice to each other or whatever. That's why we're friends. But until a bunch of us died, like a bunch of our friends just started dying in high school, a couple drunk driving accidents, cancer. So all of that stuff calcified our bond.
And were you guys all Irish Americans or just
not all of us, but a lot of us. But we but for whatever reason, we became brothers. So none of us one of us had a brother, but he passed. And then we all kind of came together, and it's we've known each other since we were 10 years old. We talk every single day. It's like still a part of our lives. We say I love you to each other all the time. That tragedy exponentially or expedited the like me saying I love you to people and like being grateful.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I wonder, I tend to generalize, and I have no statistics for my...
No, I think you're probably right. I mean, your perception is more valid than mine. I've never lived outside of the States.
I'm trying to think, because like with comedians and stuff, I feel like... so my basis would be of comedians and then working in the bar when I was working in the bar. And I felt like, I'd always be like, oh, it's a lovely top. And they're like, oh, yeah, thank you so much. Or... which is definitely not an Irish thing. And then my first group of friends are from South America too, which are very loving. So maybe that is a bit of where. So maybe that's more South Americans because they're all very huggy, kissy, lovey dovey.
Sure.
Which was really nice.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. But even like my boyfriend's family, they were all telling me they loved me. His mom has texted me he loved me. I'm like, why? I haven't heard that from my own mother because we don't talk in like 17 years, and it was always with it was always for it was like a weird, it's like, you better say love you before you leave because what if a murderer comes in and kills me? There was also like a weird,
that's fun.
It's like great.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think. Yeah, I found. But I don't know. I'm like trying to think back to my friends back home and like we say I love you.
How old were you when you left?
Because I was 23 or 24 when I left.
That's still pretty young. I mean, we experienced, our tragedies happened young. So by the time we were 23, we'd probably been to like 10 funerals at that point. Like crazy. And not just like, I'm not talking about like we were all best friends and then everybody started getting picked off and we're whittled down. But like, peripheral friends to brothers to sisters, family members, like all this stuff's just kind of happened around the same time. And we just, we had to grow up together.
Yeah. No, absolutely. We didn't have any, there was like the odd tragedy, but not like that. I think most of our friendships and why it's hard for me to remember back past 23 is because all of our lovey-doveyness stuff would only happen through booze. Mm-hmm. And we were drunk a lot.
Yeah, we were too at funerals.
Yeah. Well, oh my God, the funerals though. Irish funerals have the best sandwiches, okay?
Yeah, they do.
Oh my God, and soup. Mm-hmm.
Do you know what was weird? Did I tell you this ever? But when I went over there to play Gaelic football in Ireland, every single post-game hang, they like put out a giant platter of egg salad sandwiches.
I used to love Gaelic football matches because the sandwiches are so. I love egg salad. You said egg salad?
Yeah, egg salad.
I went to one of my brother's games a few years ago, and I went back into the green room, and they were like giving out sandwiches and cups of tea, and I was like, I forgot. Like that's my favorite thing about the football matches.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
They do it in Gaelic pitch now, but you can buy it like a cup of tea at the for like $2 or something. Gaelic pitch is great, but yeah. So I find it. I must like sit down and have a think because I think any sort of lovey-dovey stuff would have been, we were all hammered all the time, so it's kind of hard to judge because Irish people will like fight and tell each other they love each other and have sex and then not talk, be too mortified to talk to the person the next day. So I think unfortunately a lot of it is booze related, and in one way I wonder if that kind of stunts are because a lot of us don't have sex sober until you end up in a relationship.
Oh yeah,
you could have gone 10 years without having sex sober.
Jesus.
All you're having like, I just had like a whole conversation with my friend who's from she was born in Denmark, she's Kurdish, but we had this whole like intimate conversation where we had like not a fight, but both of us were being cold to each other for a second just because we were going through our own depressions. But it wasn't until we were drunk we were able to explain that we were both depressed and we were going through it, and then we cried and we hugged and told each other we love each other, and the next day we're just like, hey, how are you? And then I was like, oh my God, this is like so Irish. I need to like address that everything I said last night. So I was like, hey, everything I said last night I really meant. I really appreciate you as a friend.
Yeah.
And, sorry I was having not communicating during a depressive moment. And she was like, yeah, totally. And I was like, how fucking, but she was like Irish people are just like brown people. She's like her family are Middle Eastern and act the same. She was like, we're both had to be drunk to express those hard feelings.
I think there's like, I attribute a lot to being Irish. It's a lot of my identity, to be honest, because not just like, obviously I didn't grow up there, but my family is Irish as fuck. My grandparents were from Ireland. Like I loved it. I love the fact that I'm Irish, but anything that I attribute typically to being Irish, I'll always find somebody from a different culture saying we do that exact same thing.
Yeah.
So it's it's like, oh, Irish guilt, and they're like, yeah, fucking Syrian guilt.
Yeah.
It's like it's the same.
My friend posted this thing, Mohamed El Sheikhi, and he posted like with his, because we were doing these promos with cats, kind of like joking with each other.
Yeah.
So we've been using our cats in promos, and he started it, and I've been joking, like copying him and stuff. So it's like this like little private bit we have going, but we've been tagging each other in it. And his most recent one, he said to the audience, like, or the fans or whatever they're called, don't if you don't come, like this cat is gonna starve, blah blah blah. And I was like, oh my God, do Libyan people also have Irish guilt?
Exactly, and they do.
It's so true. Yeah, my friend who's like Kurdish was like, oh, because her family would have lived in Turkey and then she lived in Denmark, and she was like, and I don't know about Denmark, but she was like, there's definitely Kurdish guilt, there's definitely
Right.
Turkish guilt, there's definitely Middle Eastern guilt, there's definitely Arab guilt.
Yeah.
But,
there might not be Swedish rage.
I don't think
might
there's
be
Denmark guilt. Okay, they're just all walking around blonde and tall.
and, with healthcare, just feeling good, taken care of.
What I wanted to ask you, since you quit the booze, have you found that just with me coming to that realization that a booze is a lot of how we express ourselves?
Sure.
How did you find being able to express yourself like post no booze?
I mean, better and more articulate. That's for sure.
I mean, you remembered them.
Yeah,
I remember saying I love you.
Yeah, I remembered. I really cataloged my thoughts and organized them, and had it just everything is better. I going to therapy and whatever, and I think mushrooms are more responsible for my ability to communicate than alcohol ever was.
Do you see like a bubble of the word and you're like, oh, sadness.
Yeah, I read it just while making eye contact. Mushrooms for whatever reason have completely replaced my need for God, and so I don't believe in a deity or anything like that, but I do believe in human connection.
Your God.
Huh?
You eat your God.
I eat my God, and then I feel him through the earth. Wow. Or her.
Well, you said the need. Sorry, I interrupted you. You said the need for human connection.
No, just like it. I don't have a God, but I do feel like very connected to people, so that mushrooms have helped again. I think I would have gotten there anyway, but it expedited the process. It sped it up. And now I feel just like a little bit more understanding, a bit more empathetic, like more just connected to people. And that feeling is what motivates me to communicate and what allows me to like feel the green light to be like, yeah, this is my idea. This is my thought. And I'm not trying to hurt you.
Yeah. I mean, I think the best thing, I think a lot of the time when we're trying not to hurt someone, so we're not saying it and we're skidding around it, like it's so much better to just be direct. Like me and my boyfriend were having sex last night and he was doing something, I was like, kiss my neck, and he wasn't doing it the way I like it. And I was like, stop. And he was like, I was just doing what you told me. And I was like, yeah, I just didn't like it. I'm just being honest. And he's like, okay, cool. And, you know, where if I had like the old me would have tried to skid around it, and instead it's just like, no, don't like that. It's actually not working.
You'd try to imagine the thing you do like while you don't like is happening.
Imagine getting like gang sex.
Hell yeah. That's what I imagine.
And that'll never happen because I'm Irish and shameful. Wait, okay, so that's interesting. And the mushrooms, just for any listeners, don't do it until over 25.
Sure.
Your frontal
It's 25.
lobe.
Is that the official?
Yeah, that's Chansu. We had up on the podcast, but she's also the comic from Denmark and Kurdistan and Turkey. I've said all the fucking places because she's got a lot of places.
Sure. But a lot of stamps.
Yeah. But so she said she's a neuroscientist and she didn't start smoking until her 30s, smoking weed, but she said over 25 wait, because before your pathways are still developing, and any weed or hallucinogenic or whatever can affect that and bring out mental health issues. Yeah,
I'm going to go ahead and say not many people are going to wait that long, but that's great.
Be like me. I'm 32. I still haven't done it.
But do you have any impulse or desire to?
No. Yeah. I don't wanna. There's too much mental health history in my family. Like there was like an aunt who was like locked in the house and they would have to feed her through the door.
Oh.
And apparently some other aunt who tried to like, this is like great aunts who tried to like kill her kids. But also I'm not sure if that was like the War of the Worlds. I think she was listening to the War of the Worlds and thought it was real. But she also thought Elvis was in her kitchen.
Okay.
There was like a whole story of how her husband had to like basically talk her out of, because she was like, the aliens are coming, we gotta kill our kids, and he was like, yeah, let's kill them later, let's kill them at 6 a.m. and he just kept like talking her out of it, and I'm like,
just kept delaying it.
I know.
That's sweet.
Yeah. Oh, thank God she found the one.
All right, I'll divulge. My grandfather put his service revolver in his mouth in front of all 8 of his kids.
Jesus.
He didn't pull the trigger, but he was sent to an asylum and then doped up on the couch for a couple years.
Jesus.
Yeah. So there's
surprised
stuff
they sent a
swimming around.
man to the asylum.
I think that probably calls for it, though. Especially if it involves being a cop and like.
He was a cop.
Yeah. It was his service revolver.
Oh,
service
as a cop. Yeah. Jesus.
I think it was right after he retired, maybe. So he probably.
Oh, he was low.
Yeah. Yeah, but thankfully he didn't do it, and he rebounded. But yeah, that there's definitely some shit swimming in me as well.
Oh yeah.
We'll
We gotta be careful.
Yeah.
Gotta be careful. Yeah. I think
There's probably another string theory version of this universe where I am fully insane.
Oh, I think about that all the time.
Yeah.
I'm like, there's definitely one where I have jumped in front of a train, touch wood, or just like, little things like had a kid or whatever.
Do you ever do that? Do you ever like walk down the steps and start going through the possibilities of like, okay, in one universe, I tumble down here and I'm a paraplegic. In another version, I'm dead.
I do that all the time, and I'm afraid when I dream that I might consciously end up in the wrong reality, and this is my favorite reality. I don't want to go into it. Don't take me.
Can I tell you what I've been thinking lately? So you want to get weird? This is not original. I think other people have had this thought, but I am starting to believe that we don't die in our reality. That when we die in other people's reality. That we just keep we eventually die, I think. But in terms of like young death, like my friends who have died at 23, I think in their version of like their conscious reality, they went on and split and lived. And then in my reality,
I hope so.
They died. That's kind of where I'm around right now. I don't necessarily believe it, but I'd like to.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's fun. Yeah, I don't know. I just hope there's not a reality.
You don't know if the bullshit I just said is true?
No, but I was just trying to think of what I believe in. I just hope there's not a reality where I'm like still talking to my mother.
There is. Who knows? There might be one where you guys somehow patched it up. Like, so listen to this.
She took all the pills and got like a brain.
There you go.
Surgery.
Yeah. There might be. So this is this is why I say that, and not to even compare, but something that I thought was impossible would be a relationship with my own dad, who we've had, I mean, a violent past since I was young, and like a butting heads, like hardcore arguing since I can remember, 4 years old, you know? So that got worse and worse throughout the years, and it came to a head in a lot of different ways, and we didn't talk for a number of years, and then sporadically, then it would break apart, all that stuff. But in this now new reality, we have a relationship where as the dad now, and I seek no approval, no authority, no even love from him anymore. We've gotten to a place where he can now be a good grandfather to my son, and they have a relationship, and we're just kind of like, I'm cool because I'm the dad.
That's amazing. Yeah. I think each one is unique though, because
totally
to have a sentence with my mother, she's living in the different reality.
Yeah.
Because you're like, okay, well, we get pineapples. And she's like, what do you mean I'm a terrible mother? You know?
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know if I had a kid, and I don't know if there's any, unless there's a sort of a...
Oh, I'm not even saying that is what would happen. I'm saying that the possibility of anything
is endless. You never
is
know.
Out there.
That's why maybe I'll have gang sex in 10 years.
That's right. You could be. Here's the thing. When I'm in my 60s, I do plan on doing some hardcore narcotics.
I wouldn't mind going to like a sex club in my 60s.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
When you're old, then you could get just absolutely
come on, Leland.
dug out. Yeah. And by that time, he'll probably be interested in just either watching that
or...
or
loads of stuff that I'm not interested in.
No kidding.
Yeah, he's like, so these younger kids, you know.
Is he younger than you?
He's 27, yeah. So I'm 32.
Wow.
Oh, no, he just turned 28. Sorry.
Gross.
I know. But yes, yeah, you never know. That's why I always say, like, someone asked me something recently and I was like, I don't know. And they were kind of, I can't remember what it was. And I was with my friends, but I was like, no, I don't want to say, because you can't commit to anything.
Sure.
Oh, it was my friend was on a date and the girl was like, what's your 5-year plan? And he was like, I don't really know. And she was like, are you going to own property in the city? And he was like, maybe. And then she wasn't happy with those answers. And then he was kind of like, it was only like a third date. And I was like, honestly, I think those questions, I get where people are trying to prepare, but it's like, you don't know. You could get with them. They might answer yes. Oh, my 5-year plan is I'm going to have kids. And like, you don't know. You could get knocked down by a bus tomorrow. Other than, are you looking for a serious relationship? That's a fine.
Yeah.
But I think...
I think it's fine that she asked that, but it's also fine to be like, you're immediately not my type of person.
Yeah,
like I'm not on a fucking job interview in our third date.
Oh my God, that's so funny. I'm going to have to ask him, is it okay that I say this? But he said it always feels like an interview. And she basically said like the date's over because of that. She was like, I'm not interviewing. This is just as regular questions. But I would feel like that's an interview as well.
Well, that's, I mean, here's the thing. You can weave that in to find out what their hopes and dreams are in a conversation. But to ask, what is your 5-year plan? If you're not wearing a pantsuit with like your name placard on your desk, it's like beat it with that question. I have no interest in being in this type of conversation.
And it also just takes out like I think like as well, if you want to have those questions a few months down the line, but like just get to know people. That's like you just have to crack.
Yeah.
There was this dating expert at the New York Comedy Club the other night, and she was like 23 and she said, I'm a dating coach, and she was dressed in all this like really like Barbie outfit.
Okay.
And had a tiara.
She's peacocking.
Oh my God. And then so Damien Lemon was like kind of asking her like, so what do people ask? Because she has like 600,000 followers on TikTok.
Sure.
Like, fuck me, who are these? And it was like totally Andrew Tate's wet dream, by the way. Because she was like, they usually say like, she goes, my guy pays for the bills for everything. And she's pointing at her designer clothes. Like, this is Jimmy Choo's. He got that.
Yeah.
And then she's like, girls want to know how to get a guy who'll pay for things. And she's like, be the woman that they want to pay for. Dress femininely, wear makeup. Then afterwards I got up on stage and I was wearing like a boy's t-shirt, and then I was like, do you want to take a picture of me, because I don't wear makeup either, and I was like, do you want to take a picture of me and put it on your TikTok and be like, this is what not to do. But she said never go for a broke guy. And then I got up afterwards and I was like, I'm not saying that Leland's broke, but he can't buy Jimmy Choo's.
Sure.
He can't buy anything for that. That's crazy. I
gotta be honest. Even if I had that money, that'd be the last thing I'd spend it on.
Yeah,
I would rather set fire to the Jimmy Choo store and do 3 years in prison than buy my wife all that horse shit to make her feel something.
And it's awful because it's like you're telling these women to like more on their looks than meeting people on personality. And I said to her, like, if I were not to date quote unquote broke guys, because my boyfriend's not a famous comedian and he works part-time at his job, I wouldn't be with one of the best people I've ever met. And he's like so sweet, and he makes me breakfast every morning, and there's like no gender roles with like the chores. Like he is so great. Thank the Lord. He loves doing chores. Yeah. And also I now live in Chelsea because we have a great apartment that's his uncle's.
Right.
So it's like, I'm probably in a better apartment than any girl who was going for like trying to get a guy who has money. Bitch, I'm in Chelsea.
There you go.
Okay. And I'm living off comedy because for once in my life, my rent isn't insane.
Yeah.
And that's because I went for a quote unquote, I feel bad saying broke because my friend the other night was like, don't say broke. But I'm like, but she said broke, okay? She said.
Right, you're just referencing what she said. But the thing is, it's like, you can't get away from this. And obviously social media has made it like almost tip heavily in the other direction. But like, there's people that look at life as a game to be won. Mm-hmm. And that's her, right? She's looking to have the most expensive clothes, date a rich guy, get to the next level, like continuing to move up in this like game of more or less like capitalistic gain, which is fine. But then there's other people that look at life as experiential, where you're like, oh, okay, I want to find love. I want to like gain some semblance of human understanding. I want to have meaningful, impactful relationships with people. Like I want to chase my dream. I think that's important. Like all those things. So you're not going to find common ground with somebody like that. No. You're just going to be like, okay, you are playing life one way, and I'm playing life in the exact opposite way. And I'm not going to judge you to your face, but I'm going to tell you that I think you're a vapid, shallow twat behind closed doors.
I'm judging. Wait, okay, so we've already have like 8 minutes left.
Mm-hmm. Was vapid, shallow twat too much? Well, you'll have to listen to the whole episode.
In Ireland, we say twat.
Twat?
Yeah, and then I come over here and you guys are like, twat. And I'm like, oh, you sound like some D4. No offense. So if you're listening and you're from D4, thank you for your support.
I think twat has a little less oomph. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like,
but it's like the way we say cunt
like
is fun. And then you guys say cunt. And you're like,
cunt.
ooh, it's in your throat.
Cunt. Does it sound more harsh from an American? Mm-hmm. Cunt.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, I felt like you just hit me. Because we're like, cunt.
Yeah, you guys do say, I do wish that it was like slightly more acceptable to kind of say as a throwaway here, because it is a fun word.
It's fun. Yeah. I want to ask you, how do you, so like with your son, and you're probably thinking, well, no, you're not probably thinking, but just when you were saying you changed a lot or you got a lot of hope and stuff, have you thought about how to not pass on those like Irish hang-ups that we don't like the not being able to take a compliment, the constant like, oh, I feel like, because there is an Irish Catholic guilt thing, whereas like you should feel bad because you'll feel better in heaven, and I think we've hold on to those religious hang-ups without being religious anymore.
Yeah, no, it's beyond religion. It's totally cultural.
It's in our core, but we're not going to mass.
The interesting thing that you find from having a kid is that you know, a lot of your hangups are fucking genetic. Like it just truly is
But it's
passed
like
down involuntarily.
That's totally generational trauma.
Yeah, 100%. And you watch it, and like I watch my son have feelings about things that I know he hasn't witnessed, that I know I haven't given to him consciously, at least. Like, and I'm like, oh, okay, interesting. So the way I'm approaching it is to be a 100% open book, honest communicator with my son, to the point where I might be transparent to a fault. I haven't gotten there yet, but I may be, because I plan to be that open about information. I want him to have every bit of it. I didn't find out about my grandfather doing that until I was like 34 years old. Yeah. And I had I've been dealing with depression and anxiety issues my entire life, and nobody knew or told me what it was. And I thought I was alone, like I'm fucking weird. Nobody else in my family feels this way. And then my sister, like offhanded, told this story, and I was like, "What? Like what the fuck, man? Like that just like plugged so many holes all at once that I was resentful of receiving the information that late. So all I can do is be there for him and be a communicator and a strong support system. Because listen, the world is gonna fuck him up. The world is gonna traumatize him. I am the safe space. My wife and I, our home, our family, the love and support we have for each other, that's the pillar that he can hopefully, you know, anchor himself to, and then go out and get fucked up by the world.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah.
That's perfect. It's better than getting fucked up inside and then going out and getting more fucked up by the world. Oh, whatever.
Well, that's the weird thing, and I understand that there's different parenting philosophies, but people that are like, I have to harden my kid because the world is hard, it's like, I kind of feel the exact opposite, because the world is going to harden your kid. Yeah. And you don't have to be like a pussyfoot, I'll buy you a fucking chocolate every time you cry kind of person, but to emotionally offer support and being there. I don't look at that as weakness. I look at that as emotional strength and support. So you are doing nothing but building up their foundation of like emotional stability. Yeah. I don't like, you know, I got hit as a kid, and you know, a fair amount, and so I talk about it on stage sometimes, and sometimes there are parents that vocally oppose what I have to say, and I'm not even up there lecturing. I'm more or less just telling the story of my childhood, and they're like, you listen, kids listen once they get hit, and it's like, yeah, and now I also need to get choked to come. So there's like multiple responses to it. It's so not funny. Just one thing. Yeah, there's a lot of other things that are happening while you hit your kid.
Yeah. I that's so interesting. I think too, even something like with parents who don't necessarily just hit, or then there's also emotional abuse, but there's a thing with Irishness with like not crying. Mm-hmm. And I found that very bad, because I always felt like I couldn't cry. Mm-hmm. And then there's something my therapist has always been like, cry, let it out. And it's such a relief. And you're like, oh, I just come here every Tuesday to cry. And I'm just crying all those times because there's always like a, why are you crying? Oh, you're crying. Like, you know, attitude. Even if it's like, I remember one time I was working with someone and they were like shouting at me, and then I started to cry. And then it was like in an Irish environment. They were like, oh, no, you're fucking crying. And I was like, and it was the first time I was able to communicate. I was like, if you shout, I will cry. If you don't want me to cry, I won't. If you don't want me to cry, don't shout. Yeah. And they were like, ugh. But
now I have to control myself.
Yeah. And I think that's something that you know, my boyfriend is always like, it's okay to cry, or like, let it out. And it really helps, because then you're just like, like more soothed, and there's like things in your tears that soothe you. So that is something I think for my future kid, I would definitely want to be like, it's okay to cry.
Oh, yeah.
Because sometimes I feel like Irish parents feel like they're doing something bad if you're crying. They're like, why are you crying? And you're like, you know, stop crying. And then you feel like you have to stop crying.
Mm-hmm. But having my son has helped me with adult relationships too. Mm-hmm. Because the way I talk to my son when he has an outburst is, it's totally cool that you feel this way. Yeah. You're not allowed to hit me. You know what I mean? Or something like that. Or you're not allowed to this. Yeah. It's more than okay for you to have these feelings. It's totally normal, and I encourage you to feel them. It's not okay to act this way, to like basically emote. And that also has helped me with adults, where I'm like, hey, it's totally cool that you're pissed off about this, but don't scream in my face unless you want an equal and opposite reaction, because you don't want that. You don't. You don't want me to get to your fucking level of screaming, because I am a lunatic once my rage hits a certain level, and I don't want that. Yeah. So it's like it actually has helped quell a lot of like potential blow up situations.
Yeah, I think that's great. I feel like ever since I moved to America, I don't know what it is, but I feel like I've been able to communicate more like that.
Yeah.
Or maybe therapy, being like,
Yeah.
because I've had friends where I've been like, no, it's not okay for you to treat me this way. And if they're like, oh, well, I'm going through a bad time, I'm like, okay, well, if you're not in a space to talk to that, when you are ready, I want to talk about these things. And then them continuing to do it and me just being like, okay, like this is not okay. And then eventually going, I'm blocking you. You have had polite warnings.
Yeah, yeah.
And now here we go.
I have 2 comedy friends that meet that exact description. Ex-comedian friends. Because, you know, when you're younger, or at least when I was younger, I wanted to find equally broken souls and like feeling like the island of misfit toys and everybody's missing an eye or an ear or whatever the fuck. And you start kind of glomming onto each other for support and stability. And then you're like, some people don't want the support. They actually want to drain your life force. And I'm negative and fucked up enough as it is. The last thing I need is a pilot fish that simultaneously drains my blood. Yeah. Like, I don't need that. No,
100%. It's such a great thing to learn.
Yeah.
Okay, before we go and before we do your plugs, so you'd recommend having a kid really quickly?
If you want one, I would recommend it, because I've always underneath everything knew I wanted one, and having one has elevated me as a human being on every single level.
And it's not hard with comedy.
Of course it's hard.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's the hardest thing I've ever done.
Okay.
I mean, being a parent is fucking nearly impossible with any job. So it's difficult. And the most fulfilling thing I've ever done.
I do love, though, that you did text that earlier, because it does show that you're like, no, I spend time with my wife and child.
Oh, yeah. Especially on Mondays are like our day typically.
Oh, shit. Thanks
No,
for
no,
coming.
no, of course. But I like work. I'm working.
Yeah,
but this is work. I'm talking about God here.
And mushrooms.
Yeah, and mushrooms. Someday I'll show my son this episode.
Yeah.
But it's important to me, you know, because my dad didn't really carve out time for us at all. Especially once he started working a lot, so it was hard.
Yeah. I that'd be the only reason if I would love to have a kid just for the do not do all the things that kind of happened to me, like give them a different sort of. But yeah, I just want to make sure if I do, I'm like where I need to be with comedy, because I also don't want to have like any resentment either.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
so I mean
my dad was an actor and then would routinely blame us for him not making it.
my mother was the same. She was an artist and she was always like, I could have done things, and I'm like, bitch, I already knew you were let go from that before I was born. But you know, like, again, I'm sure in her head, maybe if she had the time, but it's also like, I also know you said you were on the pill when you weren't. This is all your fault.
Yeah,
My creation was not.
Yeah. Also your choice.
Yeah.
In terms of the creation.
Yeah. You said you were on the pill. Be on the pill. But I'm really happy. So thanks for being manipulative.
Yeah.
And creating me. It worked out. Okay, so you have a ton of stuff out on YouTube.
Yeah, I have 3 specials on YouTube, 2 hours of material, and then 1 crowd work on edibles special, which I guess I'm filming another one on Thursday.
Jesus.
So, yeah, that'll
at
be
New York.
At New York Comedy Club in Stamford, and then back in the city. So I'm doing 2 shows.
On the same night?
Yeah, I'm going to be on like 200 milligrams. It's going to be fucking, I barely want to do it, but it's going to be great. And the hour, it's called Huge Mistake on YouTube. It was so fun. It was like, the reason why I'm nervous about it is because the first one went so well, and this might be an Irish thing, because I listen to a lot of podcasts about basketball and like sports, and once an athlete, like, they're like, I was an all-star this year, so the next year they carry themselves like an all-star, and like they just have this newfound confidence and ability. And that's a thing that I don't have, where once I reach a level, I'm like, well, I can never do that again.
Yeah, that's such an Irish thing.
I get scared. So I just wish I had more of like, I reached it. I could do that fucking 10 more times in my sleep. No problem. Yeah. So we'll see on Thursday.
It'll be great. Maybe get some of that CBD oil so you can like regulate yourself.
Nah, the fun is in the freak out.
Oh, the fun is in the you're crying on the second show.
That's right.
What's your Instagram handle?
It's at I am Mike Cannon for everything. So any social media that you frequent, at I am Mike Cannon. And the podcast, Here's the Scenario, with Brendan Sagalow and Michael T. Feeney,
who have both been on the podcast before for long-time listeners. And you don't have the other podcast anymore? No,
not Irish Goodbye. But I might be coming to Ireland, actually, this year. I'm talking to a booker, so hopefully we can...
Okay, well, I'll put your website in the description, because then your ticket links will...
Oh, hell yeah.
Definitely go to Ireland. Okay, we'll talk about it afterwards, but I want to know what booker you're talking to.
Okay,
I
hope it's not horrible.
It's going to be great. Okay, bye, everybody. Thank you, Pat. as usual, handle will be in the description. And Patreon/The Shift Podcast. Please sign up and give me money. And what else? Rate, review, all of that. But other than that, love yous. And again, the video is 2 weeks later on YouTube, 2 weeks earlier on Patreon. And just tell all your friends. Okay, bye. Love yous.